My name is Randall. I'm an art and design teacher at Merredin Girls' School in Sydney. I wish to share with you my personal experience of developing a design innovation and how I went about progressing it and have it adopted by others. This is very much a real-world experience which I hope to pass on to fellow teachers of design and ultimately to the innovators of tomorrow. I don't want you to think that my story has ended, as I'm still very much in the thick of it, seeking to improve the innovation and see it be adopted by more people. I'm sure you're very familiar with the launch of the iPhone by Steve Jobs. I've shown it to my students many times, no doubt, as you have to yours. It's inspiring, but it needs to be seen for what it is, mythology. The American poet Ralph Waldo Emerson said, "Build a better mousetrap, and though you live in the woods, the world will beat a path to your door." In other words, Emerson believed in the power of the individual to change the world, that innovators are such highly valued people that even if we invent something as insignificant as a better mousetrap, and even if we live in the middle of the forest, people will go out of their way to find us. As a teacher of art and design, I believe that Emerson is right. Designers and innovators are global change makers, and we need to share this vision with our students. What they create has the potential to affect the lives of many, and the students sitting in our classrooms today have an opportunity to reshape the world of tomorrow. Now, my innovation is not a mousetrap, but an idea that came to me when I was out rowing one morning on a river. My design is in the category of design appropriation, taking two existing design concepts and putting them together, a bit like sticking an eraser on the end of a pencil, where an existing technology is added to another. One idea is taken to improve on another. My design applied the existing technology of the hydrofoil and applied it to a rowing oar. Now, a hydrofoil is a surface set against the flow of water or liquid to create lift. You commonly see hydrofoils used in boats with a wing below the surface of the water to lift the entire boat up off the water as though it is flying. You should go and have a look at the new America's Cup yachts, the AC-75s. They're quite incredible. My design places a hydrofoil along the top edge of a rowing oar to stop the rower being able to bury the oar deeply in the water. I recognised a performance issue with the oar and that there was no way to control the depth of the oar other than through hours of training and practice. But placing a lifting surface along the top of the blade or the spoon, no matter how hard the rower pulled, the oar would stay close to the surface of the water. This little design change creates a dramatic improvement in the performance of an oar, and the hydrofoil eliminates the amount of contact between the water and the shaft and makes it easier to take a rowing stroke. Now, my preliminary trials in an Olympic class rowing boat created a crazy 5% speed increase. That's 10 to 20 seconds in a rowing race over 2,000 metres. Now, this design went on to be used at the 2019 World Championships, winning gold. And I'd like to show you a segment of that race now.
In front on the right of your screen, Goretti. In second place, Peter Galambos at the top of your screen. In third place, it's the Australian Sean Murphy. The Mexican back in fourth at the moment. That's the 1, 2, 3 as we are into the second quarter of this race. 1,250 metres to go. Sam Mottram yet to figure. The British sculler there back in fifth.
That's right, this is Sam Mottram we're having a look at here, looking along his blades. That's a very conventional looking blade that we're used to seeing, but he's back in sixth place, and he's about 30 metres behind, so he won't be pleased with the way the field's got away from him when you look at the spread up to the Italian sculler here at the head of the field.
You can just see, can't you, on the top of those blades, that foil that Goretti is using, that sort of black mark at the top of the blade, helps the blade get more bite, more purchase. Means he's got to be a little easier on his gearing, a little looser. But he finds that he goes really well with those blades.
Well, we've got to say thank you to ORF for these fantastic pictures. You're seeing this World Rowing production doing their best to try and show you what we're asking for, which is that spoon of that Italian blade with a little black foil along the top of it.
After the race, the winner, Martino Goretti, sent me this photograph and a letter crediting my design with his win. But this is not the focus of my presentation, but sharing the reality of a designer trying to progress their innovation. I believe it's important for students to have clear expectations so they will not be discouraged and give up when they don't have their own Steve Jobs moment. Some truths about being an innovator. You are not loved, no one is seeking you, and there is more incentive for people to keep using the same old mousetrap they've already purchased. Why do you think it was an Italian using my design and not the Australian? When in fact it was the Australian Institute of Sport and Rowing Australia I contacted first about my discovery. Think about it. Have you ever had a great idea and tried to progress it? Perhaps it was a new widget for fixing the thing, or an app for ordering coffee just the way you like it. Or perhaps you proposed a better way something around your school could be organised. How far did your idea go? How far did you progress? What was your experience? Did the world beat a path to your door? Were you invited on stage with cheers and excitement? No, I didn't think so. So what do you do with a great idea? Do you have an obligation to progress it? Well, I say yeah. And I call this an ought. What's an ought? It's a very human way of seeing the world. If there's a tree in the forest, we ought to study it, classify it, we ought to climb it, tie a rope swing underneath it. We ought to photograph it, or cut it down, mill it for furniture. We ought to build a bridge, or perhaps a homeless shelter. Or we ought to pulp it for cardboard. Perhaps we ought to leave it alone. A designer and an innovator is someone who has an ought. There's a sense of duty that this thing ought to be made better. If you have an ought, you ought to progress it. However, you will encounter resistance more than you ever could imagine. It will cost you more than you expect, but it will be worth it. Humans are creative and innovative beings. However, our capacity to be discouraged or give up is too great. And we can see this in the many historical products and processes and ideas which continue to haunt us. If you don't believe me, do some reading about the QWERTY keyboard. We still are using it for no other reason than historical legacy and our incapacity to change. Often we think that real-world innovation comes from large corporations with research and development, or leading university laboratories with research grants. But you need to recognise this also as the Emerson fallacy. Because more often than not, innovation comes through two things. One is a lead user, and secondly is an actor network. A lead user are individuals who use their own innovation, and they do so in the face of ridicule. A leading Australian rowing coach from my own club saw my design and said, "What's all that crap on your oars?" when I was testing an early prototype. Now, actor networks are communities who become interested, support, and adopt your innovation. These are essential to find or to create, but importantly, they will not come to you. They may be people who you would least expect. So innovators must see themselves as brave, courageous individuals, lead users, and then build up an actor network around them. Lead by example. Use your innovation. Understand the fundamentals of why your design works, how it works. Do your research. understand the science, and go out and speak with people who are most likely to adopt your innovation. Here we come to the wisdom of bees. Bees work together, they trust one another, and they will die to protect their community. But every once in a while, one bee will rebel, will ignore all instructions and fly off in totally the wrong direction. Yet this rebellious bee will ensure the survival of the entire hive. By going off in a new direction, they come across new blooms, new blossoms, new flowers. But here's where it gets interesting. After finding the new flowers, this solitary bee returns to the hive and does what is called a waggle dance. This dance directs just a couple of bees to the new flowers, who then return and direct a couple of other bees to the new flowers, who then return. And the numbers of bees going to these new flowers grows exponentially. 1, then 2, 4, 16, till all of the hive are now going to these new flowers, until one bee rebels and goes off in a completely other direction. Innovators are like the rebellious bee, going off in a different direction, finding new flowers. Telling others seems slow, as only 1 or 2 are listening. But they will tell others, who will tell others in turn. Now, I developed my design in 2016, and I saw the potential of it. But I didn't really understand how the hive worked. I went straight to the queen and thought that she would direct all the bees to the new flowers that I had discovered. I told the Institute of Sport and Rowing Australia, and they're still not interested. I was recently in the news, and those that saw the article came to me and said, "Aren't they stupid? Why are people so stupid? Why would they not just try it? What have they got to lose?" Well, 2 Senate inquiries later and a case before the Australian Sports Tribunal, Rowing Australia are still resisting using the design. As a lead user, I knew that I needed a place to develop my design. So I contacted my old high school, but they were too busy. So then I wrote to all rowing schools in Sydney and was invited by St Ignatius College, Riverview, to develop it over 12 months. And to find my actor network, I wrote to rowing clubs and schools and universities here and overseas. Montgomery Bell Academy in Nashville, they were interested in testing it, as their head coach was a maths teacher who had been thinking of something similar years earlier. Now, his high school went on to win major regattas using the design. And then I kept being contacted by old masters rowers who were keen to try it, and then they all started winning. The Italian who won at the World Championships, it turns out 3 months earlier he was dropped by his federation after placing 3rd in a European race. He had heard about my design and was keen to test it, and then he won team selection again and went on to win the World Championships. It will be interesting to see which other teams will be using my design at the next World Championships or the next Olympics. I would like to conclude by saying that progressing in innovation can take years, if not an entire lifetime. And having the pleasure of sharing an innovation that you have developed on your own with another person and seeing them benefiting from it is very rewarding. I wonder, have you got a better design for a mousetrap? Thank you.